We're talking about episode 41, Finding Art, A Life Well Lived with Tom Lee, who took a workshop with
Hmm.
Jenni and Lacey at the Canadian Cancer Society. This
Hmm.
episode was released in September of 2025. What resonated for you in that episode?
Yeah, it was a great one. Tom is he's a wonderful. I mean, you guys covered a lot of ground in that
Yeah.
one. He's a wonderful conversationalist, and so there's a lot that I wrote down. But I would say one of the ones that maybe the first one I would say is I loved how he talked about how digital storytelling can really be this multimodal experience, right? This
Hmm.
multimodal artistic experience. He's got artwork that he has created that then he included in his story about artwork, and so it's just like to me, it just highlights how digital storytelling is not just about video editing. It's not just about photos that you take of your everyday life and things like that,
Hmm.
but you can actually incorporate all sorts of different types of artwork into this other form of art, right? And
Yeah.
so to me, I love that, right? Because there's so many people who use paintings, and I just recently finished a story that had the entire digital story is based around this painting. It's
Cool.
just beautiful, and you get to see the time lapse that she filmed of this painting being made, and as she's talking about what it meant to her and the things she was thinking about as she was making it, and it's just such a beautiful story. And
Mike,
and
did
so
we just
yeah.
tell the same digital story? Because I worked with somebody who also did the same
Oh,
thing where
really?
they did
Yeah.
a digital story about invisible illness and
Hmm.
autism and used a painting to do it. So there's like drone footage coming in on the painting as
Oh,
she's
amazing.
painting the work. I think that's interesting that we're
Yeah,
both doing the same thing.
this one's about head and neck cancer, but it's a very similar idea, right? But
Ah, cool.
it's and Tom's was the same, right? And
Yep.
I just love that idea about integrating all these different things. Sometimes people do their own music, sometimes they have
Yep.
their own paintings and drawings, sometimes they use their own poetry, right? I've
Yep.
done a slam poetry one before, right? And so anyways, it's just so I love that part, right? Of the conversation. It was really cool to hear him talk about that. And the other one that I really liked about it is he says he's always been sort of as an academic, former academic, he's always been resisting this push for hyper specialization in
Yep.
his life,
Yep.
and how digital storytelling and the film and the videos he makes on YouTube is him pushing back against this. He can only be an engineer, right?
Yep.
And I love that way of thinking about digital storytelling. Isn't that cool? That digital storytelling as a tool to help resist the hyper specialization of life. Because everyone wants to shove us into these little boxes, right? And
Mhm.
and this is the only thing you can do is this, because this is what your training is. This is what you're supposed to be. This is how you make your money. And digital storytelling being an opportunity for people from any walk of life to open up this artistic
Yep.
path that they may really enjoy, right? That they may really find meaning from. And so, anyways, I love that idea, and I'm gonna start using probably that type of language, for people
Yep.
who are really nervous, right? Because I'm doing a workshop right now with veterans who have PTSD, and they're all just like, I'm not a storyteller. I'm a facts guy. Some guy said that to me. I'm like, well, guess what? You don't have to just be a facts guy, right?
Yep.
You're human, which means you can tell a story if you want, and resisting that hyper specialization and that allowing the world to put us into boxes. I think that's such a cool way to think about digital storytelling.
Well, and Tom had recently sent me a draft of his book because he brought
Cool.
up the fact that like it wasn't just digital storytelling. He was doing YouTube videos already. And I think
Yeah.
something that putting the story together in a digital story format was one thing that was different for him. But he was also talking about how he learned some new techniques for what he's already been doing. And I thought that was
Yeah.
just another
Hmm.
example of how you're collaborating with somebody and learning new skills as you're doing a digital story. It's
100%.
just a neat way to
Yeah.
do it. Anyways,
Hmm.
we were talking about episode 41, Finding Art, A Life Well Lived with Tom Lee. The link will be in the show notes below, and definitely go have a look at Tom's story, his YouTube channel, and listen to the podcast. Thanks, Mike.